We're here today to talk about high-speed broadband access for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I'm going to ask Congressman Hal Rogers to come up first. Congressman?
Thank you, Governor. Governor Beshear, Senator Stivers, Speaker Stumbo, Mountain Caucus members and others, and we've got several county judges and mayors with us today. I want to thank first the governor for his comments last night in general, but also especially for his reference in his address and in his budget for the broadband project that he and I have been discussing for some time, and also his cooperation and collaboration with all of us on the SOAR campaign, shaping our Appalachian region. We're making some really good progress, and I'm thrilled about it, and I appreciate the governor's work and all the others on SOAR. We had some monumental successes just this last week. The omnibus bill was signed into law, giving our country a budget for the first time in years.
Amen.
It also renewed a much-needed bipartisan spirit on Capitol Hill in Washington. Now, I'm not sure that will last all that long, but it was a good feeling for at least a day to smell the roses for a day. And on Friday, USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack announced the Strike Force program to expand into Kentucky in big-time ways. Governor Beshear and I presented the SOAR Summit report from Eastern Kentucky's historic meeting in December at Pineville last week. And that report, by the way, is a very exciting compilation of ideas of how to rejuvenate the economy of Eastern Kentucky. Our 1,700 summit participants really poured out their heart and soul in those hearings over there, and as compiled in this report that's available to you. In that report, the most common theme mentioned by the participants was broadband. Some of the comments were like this. One of them said, broadband is the key to the future. Another said it's an effective technology. Another said, and I'm quoting, in expanding and recruiting businesses, Eastern Kentucky needs to have access to high-speed internet, not just connectivity, speeds that would support high-tech manufacturing, telemed, distance learning. It also supports commuting, end of quote. Those are comments that explain that we're missing out on major opportunities. We're not even in the ballgame. Last August, Governor Beshear, Speaker Stumbo, President Stivers graciously met with me and listened to my description of the high-speed, high-capacity fiber cable that the Center for Rural Development in Somerset had been working on for some 2 years, developing, and that high-speed, high-capacity broadband is a key component to our future. And they agreed immediately. And so we then formed a sort of a pact between the legislative leaders and the governor and myself that we would collaborate on this project to bring broadband, high capacity, high speed to Eastern Kentucky, bringing federal and state resources to the table to kick off a major broadband project as part of the SOAR initiative. In this new age in which you and I live, the Internet's high-speed, high-capacity fiber cable is the new way of business and is to this age what interstate highways were to a previous time. Your raw material comes to your, quote, factory, quote. Your product leaves by fabric cable. No need for barges, no need for superhighways, no need for trucks or railroads or airplanes. It's done by cable. And all of a sudden, by cable, our historic shortage of those types of assets that we formerly thought were indispensable is negated. The world is flat. And it takes away the disadvantages that we've suffered for a long time with isolation, lack of good roads, and the like. So we're gearing up to begin phase 1 in eastern Kentucky, and we're calling it Kentucky's Super Highway. Get it? In the federal omnibus package that we passed last week, we were able to secure some $80 million for the Appalachian Regional Commission to increase job opportunities and per capita income in Appalachia, including $10 million for broadband deployment in distressed central Appalachian counties. Those funds would be available to distressed counties in Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, and West Virginia. I'm hopeful that this will be the beginning of federal investments for broadband in our hard-hit coal fields. Now, broadband is not a silver bullet, but I believe it will help us launch into the middle of modern competition. It can bring us up to speed and give us a chance to compete for the new jobs in that industry. It levels the playing field. It takes away our historic barriers to better jobs, the difficult terrain and isolation, and all of a sudden the world is flat, and the famed superior work talent, work ethic of our people will be able to compete with the world from home. So for the first time ever, eastern Kentucky will be in the world market without having to chase jobs in the Detroits of our past. The Center for Rural Development will be the driver for this project in eastern Kentucky. The center has been investing in southern and eastern Kentucky for some 20 years. Executive Director Lonnie Lawson and his team, Lonnie's here, had the foresight to examine new digital opportunities in the region, and they've been working on this broadband project for the last 2 years. In fact, the ARC funded the center's application for a feasibility study for dark cable in our region, which is now nearing completion. We have preliminary estimates in hand, and we look forward to a full report on that feasibility by January 30th, thereabouts. Now we need an action plan to help us take full advantage of the new opportunities afforded by our new Super Highway. We will have access to new opportunities, and we're not talking about mere call centers. We're talking about software development, engineering, and other good high-paying jobs. I've called this in the past Silicon Holler. And I think we can make that happen. It can bring the best health care specialists in the nation to our region, Pikeville, Harlan, Hazard, or wherever. Or send hundreds of thousands of MRIs, for example, to the nation's top clinics in a matter of seconds. It can connect our colleges and our universities with innovative opportunities. And for the first time, we'll be able to offer the best workforce in the nation to the rest of the world. And all of a sudden, when this is finished, eastern Kentuckians will be, for the first time ever, in the world market. And I think we can compete there. Now, Eastern Kentucky is very well represented in our state legislature. We're fortunate that natives of our part of the state are now Speaker of the House and President of the State Senate, and have been extremely helpful in all of this that we're doing so far. And I want to thank Speaker Stumbo, President Stivers especially, but also the members of the caucus, Eastern Kentucky Caucus, Mountain Caucus, for all of the work that they've participated in so far with us as well. Let me close by thanking again the governor for his cooperation and his collaboration, his ingenuity, and his money. Governor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. I value the Congressman's contributions to Eastern Kentucky and all of Kentucky, and I value his friendship. And both of those have helped us to bring these efforts together, and then to have the collaboration and cooperation of President Stivers and Speaker Stumbo has truly made this a Kentucky effort. We put the partisanship aside, and we are working toward a future for every Kentuckian in Eastern Kentucky. And this step that we are taking today is a big part of that future. You know, over the years, Kentucky's leaders have held a lot of press conferences in this room. Press conferences about investing in the state's infrastructure and things like roads and sewers and water lines, classrooms, and other structures. And all of those are critical to the future of this state and to the quality of life of our people. But what we're talking about today, as the Congressman mentioned, is another kind of infrastructure, one that is not easily seen, but one that is just as important. In fact, people who have high-speed internet access are so dependent on it that they take it for granted. They assume everybody has that capability. But here in Kentucky, as I mentioned last night, we rank 46th in broadband availability, and 23% of the state's population does not have broadband access at all. Well, we're going to fix that. In my budget address last night, I proposed that we form the Next Generation Information Highway, or the I-Way. It's an ambitious plan to extend high-speed broadband internet access to the furthest reaches of the Commonwealth, with the initial focus, Phase 1, being in Eastern Kentucky. High-speed, high-capacity broadband is an important component in building this region's future. It is no longer a luxury in today's economy. It's a critical, essential utility that supports economic development, education, health care, in every business sector. Individuals, of course, use the internet for a lot of things, from researching information for school papers, to downloading study guides, to sharing pictures, to taking college classes, to ordering Christmas presents, to paying bills. Businesses use it to share, store, and access large amounts of data, and to engage in commerce all around this world. That's why when we're talking about investing in broadband, we're talking about not just access, but very importantly, we're talking about speed and capacity. We need a system that is attractive to high-tech, knowledge-based, and information-intensive businesses. We cannot get companies most of the time to even consider locating in an area that doesn't have broadband access of this type. We're proposing to build nearly 3,000 miles of fiber infrastructure, incorporating the best available technology. Initial estimates suggest that this total project for all of Kentucky could cost about $100 million. My proposed biennial budget contains $60 million in general fund supported bonds for that project, with 2/3 of that $60 million, the debt service for that $60 million, being supported by existing expenditures, money that is already set aside for internet access. An additional $40 million will be sought from federal and private sources. Our intent here is not to compete with the private sector. Our intent is to partner with the private sector to make sure that we cover every part of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The Finance and Administration Cabinet is looking to hire a consultant by March 1 who can help validate cost estimates and provide guidance on the most effective way to proceed. Responses to an RFP were due today. And as the Congressman indicated, in Eastern Kentucky, the Commonwealth will partner with the Center for Rural Development. What we will find, undoubtedly, as we move this project in different parts of the state is that we'll be doing it in different ways. We'll be partnering with different folks. But these public-private partnerships are going to be essential to making this project work and to moving it along to conclusion as fast as possible. As you all know, the push for high-speed broadband was one recommendation that emerged from SOAR, and that as a way of moving the entire Eastern Kentucky region forward. And it's just the latest of tangible action steps that have included a proposal to four-lane the Mountain Parkway, the recent federal designation of a promise zone in Eastern Kentucky, a $2.6 million small business loan pool, and USDA's Strike Force initiative. Like those initiatives, investment in high-speed broadband will pay dividends for years. Much like previous generations' efforts to build our sewer and water systems, the electric grid, and paved highways, this initiative will solidify Kentucky's place in the new global economy. What specifically would high-speed internet access do? Well, in education, it will reduce geographic and financial barriers to education and cultural opportunities with online courses, virtual field trips, student collaboration for learning and research, and communication services for the disabled. It will also enable professional development opportunities for educators and adult learners. In economic development, it will promote business growth by attracting new business as well as supporting commerce with those existing businesses all around the world. Innovative businesses and institutions will spring up, adjacent to hospitals, adjacent to factories, adjacent to colleges, in small communities, just as easily as they now do in urban areas. In healthcare, it can supplement local medical care via access to expertise from around the world, as well as facilitate remote diagnosis, treatment, monitoring, and consultations among specialists, primary care physicians, patients, and their families. And in public safety, it would improve the ability of emergency personnel to communicate efficiently and obtain necessary information quickly in the form of real-time videos, images, and other data. You know, many other states are making or have already made investments like this. In Ohio, for example, they have recently spent $160 million to install 1,850 miles of fiber optic coverage. Indiana has invested $35 million to expand fiber to community colleges in some underserved areas. And West Virginia has spent $126 million to lay some 700 miles of fiber optic coverage. This world is growing more complex and more sophisticated by the day. Kentucky needs to keep up. And with this project, we will not only keep up, we'll move ahead. Thank you very much. Now, the Congressman and I would like to ask our partners in all of these efforts, Speaker Stumbo and President Stivers, to come up and say a few words. Mr. Speaker?
Thank you, Governor. Well, thank you, Governor and Congressman Rogers and President Stivers. I know I speak for all of my colleagues here, both Democrats and Republicans, in saying thank you for following up on the promises that were made at the SOAR conference in December. They say that the best day to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best day to plant a tree is today. But the tree that you planted in December in Pikeville has grown rapidly. And as you can see from the announcement here today, the announcement that was made in this room last week about the expansion of the Parkway, things are starting to work that will give Kentuckians in the eastern part of the state hope for a brighter future. And I want to thank both of you for allowing us to participate in that. You know, it's remarkable when you look at this kind of an effort that's developed so rapidly. I've been here, I think, 35 years now, and I don't think I've seen anything quite like it. It's one of my favorite United States presidents, Mr. President, Ronald Reagan, said, "It's unbelievable what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And I think that saying would be very apropos for the group that has pulled together not only the governor, Congressman Rogers, President Stivers, and myself, but all of the members of the Eastern Kentucky Mountain Delegation, all of the 1,700 plus people that attended the SOAR conference. It is truly remarkable what we as Kentuckians can do and what we have set in motion. But we couldn't have done that at all without the leadership of the governor and Congressman Rogers. And for that, I say from the bottom of my heart, gentlemen, thank you.
Now, President Stivers.
Thank you, Governor, Congressman Rogers, Speaker, and all my colleagues. Before I get started, I want to look at Congressman Rogers. We've been doing this for about a year and a half, so we got hope for you all, too, in Washington. But with our political differences, you know, we have been able to set those aside, and we don't always agree on everything, but when we've had the ability to talk and communicate, which really this is all about communications here today, we've been able to accomplish some things. And, you know, I pick on Representative Atkins on a time when I talk about growing up, but you know, Rocky and I grew up in the same age. And when I was growing up, I think about what it was like. We would see black and white pictures coming back from Vietnam or overseas that were 10 days old. I tease my kids about, you know, when I grew up, it took tools to watch TV and get information. We didn't think about the internet. The remote was my dad telling me to get up and change the channel. And if the channel broke, we had to get those needle-nose pliers in there to make the change. And if the wind blew, we had to go outside and put a pipe wrench on the antenna to turn it because we only got 3 stations. Now today, my children get information by fingertip, touching a button. And that's what this announcement's about. It's flattening those mountains. Where we've had an economy that's been based on natural resources, the ability to bring high-net, dark fiber internet access to the mountains will flatten those mountains. And we'll no longer be talking about lack of information. It is not that I give up hope on that economy we've developed, but this gives us hope that we can diversify in the future, and those mountains will be flattened. And the way those mountains will be figuratively flattened will be through a joint effort of individuals from the region. And this again goes to that year and a half we've had almost of setting those political differences aside to look at what's best for the region. So as the Speaker said, I want to thank him and all our colleagues, but particularly what I'll describe as strong leadership in the East of Congressman Rogers, who has been there for some 30 years, and the governor who has taken up the mantle for the last 6 years. So I appreciate them and my colleagues and all the efforts that we've been able to highlight here and bring together to make this event happen. And thank you all.
Questions?
Congressman, what do you have to say to some of your Republican colleagues in the state legislature who have already expressed concern about the level of debt in the governor's proposed budget, considering this is part of that debt?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the state debt. I'll talk to you about the federal debt. But this project is, we're going to be able to get funding. The state will only be a partial funder of this project. Monies will be coming to us from the feds, perhaps investment tax credits to some degree, and some money from the state. But the payoff of this small investment will be magnified many thousands of times over. So for the state of Kentucky and the revenue that will eventually come back to the state treasury from expanded business and more efficient businesses will dwarf the small investment that the state's making. Amen.
Governor, your news release mentions the affordability factor, that broadband can cost $20 or more a month, and some Kentuckians don't feel like they can afford it. Is there any program in place or coming down the road that would help subsidize that for people?
We are in the midst of designing how to approach this entire project for all of Kentucky. We are farther along in the design of an Eastern Kentucky program because, as the Congressman mentioned, he convened us several months ago with this idea that he and his Center for Rural Development have been working on for Eastern Kentucky. And so we're a little farther down the road there, but we're still putting all of those pieces together. And as I mentioned in my comments, different parts of this project all across Kentucky will probably be formed in a lot of different ways because we want to take advantage of the private sector as much as possible and include them in a partnership with us. I would love it if we can eventually make deals and partnerships with different private sector groups that will finance a good part of this in some way. So all of that is kind of open-ended at the moment because, as I mentioned, we're just now about to get some consultant on board from the state level to start looking at all of those different approaches that we can do. I know that the Congressman and I are both committed to making sure that whatever approaches we take, in the end, the services that will go into our communities will be affordable services so that our people will be able to take advantage of this. Obviously, there's no reason to do it if the price on it is so high that folks can't afford it. So that's going to be very much on our minds and uppermost in our minds as we devise the actual mechanisms to provide this service for our citizens.
For places that already have high-speed internet, like Louisville, Lexington, and other metropolitan areas, does this improve it at all or affect them in any way?
It depends upon really what type of high-speed capability they have. I think that some of our urban areas have the maximum capability that's out there right now, and that's what we're going to put everywhere. So it will probably mean for those areas that we're just tying in with whoever may have those areas and to make sure that in the end that is part of a broader system that works all over the Commonwealth.
Let me take a crack at that, too.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the most part in Kentucky, Louisville with maybe be an exception, the speed and capability of the fiber that we now have in Kentucky, by and large, is like this. What we're talking about is hooking onto the national grid, whose capacity and speed is like this. It's unknown in Kentucky. We will hook into the national grid in Cincinnati and bring it to eastern Kentucky from that point. I'm not sure what the rest of the state will do, perhaps even through Louisville. But even with that small capacity and speed cable that we have partly in the state, we've been able along I-75 south from Berea south to attract thousands of jobs, even with that small cable, of data processing and the like. INS makes the green card at Corbin. FBI has their call center in Barberville. INS has their operations in London and Corbin. The State Department has their international call center for visas in Williamsburg. The Veterans Administration is doing their entry of data about disabled veterans in Mount Vernon. 3 shifts. Hundreds of jobs that we've already acquired through very limited capacity. I can't wait for this. And in places where they don't even have this now, we'll be bringing this.
And as far as private company involvement here, I know last year, Governor, the so-called AT&T bill failed where they were trying to deregulate some of the landlines and be able to invest more in high-speed internet. Is this at all part of that, or how do you envision private involvement here?
Well, obviously, AT&T is one of the providers in Kentucky and a fairly big provider. So I'm sure as we move across the state, they're going to be involved in the conversations and may end up being one of our partners. It is, it's preliminary and too preliminary to really conclude exactly what this is going to look like in different parts of the state. But what I can tell you is we're going to reach out to all of those providers, as well as companies that aren't even in Kentucky right now that may be interested in partnering with us to try to make the best deals we can to get this built out statewide and to have as much private investment and participation as we can.
And there's a reason why it's called dark cable. And I'm no expert in this field, but dark cable, meaning it's not programmed. It's available for everyone to latch into and use as their vehicle, including the AT&Ts and local phone companies and the like. So the dark cable that we're laying is a vehicle that people who are in the communication business will be able to utilize as they see fit in their business. And towns and communities along the trunk line will be able to tie in to that system so that practically everyone will have access to high-speed, high-capacity internet.
When might people in eastern Kentucky expect to see a difference in their communities?
This project is going to hit the ground running, I can assure you of that. We anticipate in the next several weeks, if not the next 2 or 3 months, that we will be able to draw this eastern Kentucky part of this into at least a preliminary conclusion and have some real concrete steps set out to get on with this.
Governor, can you give a specific example of an economic development improvement that failed because an area didn't have broadband?
We have companies looking at Kentucky every day, and they will have a list of requirements for their business. They may need access to an interstate, or they may need access to a particular kind of workforce. Many times, they also will bring up the fact that, hey, for us to do business, we've got to have the capability of high-speed broadband. So every day, in their own minds, they start eliminating places that don't have that. So it is something that until we get it in to these communities, you won't know for sure just how much activity you'll end up with. I said the other day, I cannot guarantee any community that if we get you high-speed broadband access that we will be able to locate a company there. But I can almost guarantee you that if you don't have that capability, we won't be able to locate a company there. So this is a basic infrastructure need that we have to have in order to have a shot at bringing jobs to that particular community. Thank you all very much.